Custom crush is basically where a winery allows someone to make their wine within their space. So,
pure and simply, our mission at Commonwealth Crush is to provide a platform for a diversity of winemaking objectives, whether it's for individuals who have their own vineyard, but not winery resources, or for individuals who have a agritourism venture that could be supported by wine, or individuals like ourselves who we worked for other wineries. We have a day job in wine or wine adjacent, and we're looking to produce our own product.
In Virginia, it can be used by growers who have a vineyard and want nothing to do with the winemaking and produce wine, or someone that has a beautiful piece of land and knows that they want to do an agritourism sort of thing. And the sort of purpose that we built for it, which is for younger, hopefully up-and-coming winemakers that want to start to try things out but are not quite ready to get the investment to build a space, and or don't have, maybe their employer doesn't allow them to do it, or there's not space at their employer. Once we agree that we're all going to be friends and making wine together, then depending on who the person is, sometimes we help them find fruit, sometimes they're growing their own fruit, sometimes they can find their own fruit, and it becomes that sort of decision tree of what type of thing, what type of project are you trying to do, and then we do our best to help along the way and not get in the way. The first thing you gotta do is just send us an email. You can mention it to me, you can mention it to Tim, but until you send us an email, it's not real, because that's when the process really gets going. We have two basic kind of price ranges. That one is if you have a winemaker or are a winemaker, another is if you need our winemaking consulting and oversight. But not everyone fits into those price ranges exactly. But I think the most important thing is that we both parties agree that this is a good place for someone to be, and it's not just like, oh, you just need a place really bad right now, and if we look back in 2 years, this wasn't the right move for you. We don't want to put someone in that situation, because then they'll have to spend all the energy trying to find a new place. So it is important to us to make sure that there's a match in that way. But so far it's been like really just conversational and kind of organic.
Certainly we entertain individuals that are coming to us at the very early stages before they've even planted a grape or considered making wine. They can then come with us, and I'll go out to the vineyard. I'll either go out to the site or go out to the vineyard, look and see what is going on, if there's any way that we can help from the vineyard side, but then also to facilitate that movement of product into the winery and allow them to make the product they want to make.
If you want to be here with us, we're going to find a way, we're going to make sure that there's space for you. The original idea was just a place for winemakers like Tim and me to be able to both make wine in the way we wanted to make wine, but also be secure that we weren't going to have to move out at some point. We didn't have any experience courting investors, asking people for money, and we would go to talk to people about things, and I think it was pretty obvious that we hadn't thought about it far enough for someone to be comfortable with giving us money. I think we were spinning wheels for quite a while until probably 2019, when actually Pat Egan, who's one of our partners, had left Early Mountain to go to Darden and was working on business ideas, and then all of a sudden had this time to help us fully flesh out the idea further to the point of where it might actually be interesting to an investor, and started talking to investors in late 2019. Had a little momentum there, and that momentum was destroyed by the pandemic. But in retrospect, we all say that was a good thing, because it allowed us to further flesh things out, and it really put the pressure on us to think through the idea, to make it more detailed, and to understand where the location should be, those sorts of things that were pretty amorphous in 2019. So in 2021, we really started to gain some momentum because we had some real interest in getting the company off the ground, and had to sort of really make a decision of where we're gonna put Commonwealth Crush. And we had looked in Charlottesville, and it was just too expensive for the cost of square footage for a lease. And so we had kind of settled on either building it at our farm or some industrial space here in Waynesboro, because Waynesboro is pretty much the best place to get industrial space, like within driving distance of Central Virginia. And we liked the idea that it was 1 foot in the Shenandoah Valley, because we're really excited about the idea of viticulture here, but close to all of our friends and colleagues in Central Virginia. It's kind of started slow, gained momentum, and then really went fast starting in 2022, and here we are now.
Early on in my graduate studies, I worked with a lot of winemakers in the state. Some of these early mentors for me, Jeff White and Jim Law and Jake Bushing. Really, they inspired me to pursue grape growing. And then through grape growing, I came to fall in love with winemaking as well. But really, for Commonwealth Crush, this platform is also inspiration. So a lot of the techniques that are being employed by other winemakers in this space allows me to see firsthand what they are doing and sharing with me over the T-bin and saying, gosh, this smells great, this is incredible. And I get to ask, well, how'd you make it? And why did you choose to do it this way?
Winemakers come in and can talk to each other. Even during harvest, the best we can do is text each other because we're all siloed in our vineyards and wineries. But here we have the ability to, I'll see Jake one day, and all of a sudden Rachel and Nathan will walk in, and then Tim will walk in. And so it's not that we have a whole bunch of time to share a couple glasses of wine, but we can at the very least go pull some wine from the tank and be like, what's that smell like? And that sort of thing doesn't happen in the normal winery where there's just one winemaker. So the more of that, the better, I'd say.
This microcosm of integrating our thoughts and our ideas is both shared throughout the state of Virginia as well. We have the Winemakers Research Exchange, which is really truly a citizen science. All of us winemakers are scientists. We're employing these experiments and then sharing the results.
The way that the Virginia Wine Board has enabled collaboration through experimentation, through just funding initiatives and those sorts of things. And it all goes back to this idea that we're all in this together, sort of idea of we have some challenges and how do we fix them? And that's where things like the Winemakers Research Exchange have come out of. But yeah, as Tim said, we were young people that didn't know anything, but both Jim Law and Jeff White invited us in because we expressed the idea that we were thinking about planting grapes, and they were like, okay, well, come, let's share some thoughts. And that's sort of, I think because they were like that, the younger winemakers were like that. Matthew Finot was like that for me when I moved back to Virginia, Emily Hodson the same way. And so it's just it's trickled throughout the industry, and I can't think of a winemaker or a grape grower who I've said, hey, can I come visit you and just kick the tires, talk shop, who's refused. They've all been like, come, please come. That is something that, yeah, we can we can say we have that not everyone says they can have.
The Shenandoah Valley offers a lot of potential for both growing grapes and making wine. When we were first starting our project at the family farm in Fort Defiance in the central part of the Shenandoah Valley, we were exploring both the climate but also the soils. And initially the soils really spoke in a great way in that the bedrock was limestone, and the soil that laid over top of that limestone was long eroded and very poor. And so these old soils that are limestone based are heavily eroded and really not great for growing corn or soybeans, especially up on the hillsides.
The Shenandoah Valley AVA is quite big, and the kind of grapes you can grow in the northeastern part of the valley are very different than the southwestern part, because the northeastern part of the valley is, at 1/3 the elevation of the southwestern part. So it's a pretty diverse place to grow grapes.
Where we are situated in the Shenandoah Valley, we receive less rainfall than most of the valley, but also less rainfall than the rest of the state. And so with rainfall, it increases the humidity, which increases the risk to certain diseases, specifically downy mildew, but also these cooler, drier temperatures then might lead us to having more susceptibility to other diseases. So really, it's the lower rainfall that makes grape growing in the valley much better in the way that we can be a little bit less intensive in our control of diseases, but at the same time, from a climatic perspective, we're cooler and our growing season is shorter. So we're not able to ripen some of the bigger varieties like Tannat or Cabernet Sauvignon, but at the same time, we can also focus on some of these cooler climate varieties like Riesling and Blaufränkisch and make them very typic, but at the same time, in incredibly fresh and fun ways.
I think at Commonwealth Crush, we definitely want to be involved in what the conversation of the Shenandoah Valley is, because it's less explored, but also people seem more interested in it these days. They're understanding that we can grow really high quality grapes here. But as Tim said, there are a lot of different voices, and that's kind of what has made Virginia interesting forever is different voices and not everybody doing the same thing.
What we have is this diversity of regional grape growing that has different climates and different ripening constraints. And so we certainly need to continue to explore what varieties are best suited for the valley or for the Piedmont or for Northern Virginia. Because these areas are so diverse, both in their geology but also in their climate, we have the opportunity to be very diverse in what we plant and what we grow and how we make our wines. The style of the valley is really inherently based in the climate and the soils that we grow on. Beyond that, I think there's a lot of opportunity to push outside the normal limits of that Bordeaux blend or trying to make a bigger red, a bolder red. We can create these really fresh and inviting white wines, and at the same time, reds that are a little bit lighter and livelier. Looking at the future of Virginia wine, for me, comes more from the aspect of growing grapes. I see sort of this groundswell and interest in growing grapes as sustainably as possible. And so certainly we're looking at varieties that are best suited to our climate. And because our industry is so young, we don't really know what those grapes are through and through.
The future of Virginia wine, that's a question we are always asking ourselves, and it's a tough one to answer for a number of reasons. One, we're young, and so there's so many different directions we still can go. Two, there's certainly something to be said for what the climate is doing to us, and that has a big impact on agriculture, which has a big impact on the grapes we grow and how we grow them. And three, it really also has to do with the people that come into it. And kind of going back to one, it's a young industry, and so we still have this opportunity for anyone to come into this industry and make a pretty big impact and kind of change our trajectory in a way that's much harder to do in Burgundy, even Napa, certainly smaller parts of California. It's easier to have an impact, but we're just at this really interesting point of still figuring out who we are. That said, I think the future does entail new varieties, new grape varieties, probably both new vinifera varieties that work well here, disease-resistant grape varieties that either act like vinifera or they don't, and probably continue along this line of a diverse set of wines. So I don't see us, coalescing on a white and a red and everyone in the state doing those two things and doing them in the same way that you would see in Burgundy. I think we'll still be a very sort of a landscape of a lot of different grape varieties being planted and a lot of different winemakers making wines in different ways. It is a relatively big state, so that makes sense. It's not really a region, it's a state with a number of regions. So we will continue along that way. And I think we'll always be, well, maybe not always, but for the next 30 years, we'll continue to be a boutique place as opposed to a place where we're on the bottom shelf of the grocery store and commanding the sort of low end of the market. We'll always be about handcrafted wines that, if you're drinking the wine, you're not that far from the winemaker in terms of your degrees of separation.
Commonwealth Crush means stability. And so it means stability for Midland, which is a project that we started so long ago, and we've hopped through our winemaking iterations with different folks. But really now this place is a home for us. So this implies that this is home for us indefinitely. And Midland may never get to the point where we build our own winery. We'd love that conceptually, but at the same time, it's incredibly expensive and we don't necessarily have the resources to do that. So I consider Commonwealth Crush being a home for brands like Midland, Star Party, Lightwell Survey, for as long as it makes sense for us. And really that is the idea, is that there may be a time that a client of ours sees that their production and their sales are going so well that it makes sense for them to build their own winery. And it may be that in time a client matures and leaves us for better days that are elsewhere, but at the same time, I don't see myself building a winery anytime soon. And I look forward to the opportunity to both grow grapes for Commonwealth Crush, but also make wine at Commonwealth.
We started with certain ideas and to see where interest comes from. Some of our clients have been folks that have had actual physical wineries and were either constrained by the winery or needed a bigger space, or just wanted to work in a different way. We work with Rachel and Nathan from Stinson and Ankita, and I think they appreciate our ability to do the grunt work while they can make sure that their vineyards are going well. They can really stay at a high level in terms of the winemaking and make the decisions when they want to make the decisions. So, you know, smaller places, sometimes you get caught up in the minutia of stuff and, you know, wish you had more time for winemaking. And so I think it'd be great if we could be a place like that for more folks. If you're open to it, like this idea that we all are teaching each other stuff is a good way to grow, and hopefully the way we can continue forward.